arrest finally made in the fatal shooting of an unarmed African-American man who was out for a jog. The latest details and President Trump's reaction next on The Five.
Welcome back. Two white men in a Georgia court today accused of killing an unarmed black man. Authorities arresting those men with more than 2 months after the deadly shooting. AHMAUD Arbery's family says he was out for a jog in February before he was killed. The father and son suspects, Gregory and Travis McMichael, say they thought Arbery was connected to recent thefts in their neighborhood and fit the description of the suspect. Video leaked this week shows Arbery running down the street with the truck stopped in the middle of the road and the McMichaels waiting with guns. Travis McMichael fired his gun. He and Arbery struggled for it, and eventually the younger McMichael shot him. The president weighing in now.
I saw the tape, and it's very, very disturbing. It looks like a really good young guy, and it's a very disturbing situation to me, and I just, my heart goes out to the parents and the family and the friends.
Emily, let me start with you, and I want to play for you something from Phil Holloway, former prosecutor and a police officer there in Georgia, who's on the Daily Briefing earlier, talking about the claim of self-defense in Georgia.
In the state of Georgia, you cannot lawfully claim self-defense if you're the one who starts a fight or if you start an altercation. And in this case, when we saw the video, to me, it looks like the shooter is the one that started the whole altercation.
And Emily, there's reports from the first DA, who then recused himself, basically saying that there existed a second video, but apparently, I asked the Attorney General of Georgia today, he doesn't even know if that video actually even exists. Have you taken away from here?
Exactly, and I think that's part of what is so disturbing about the situation is that the conclusions that were drawn from watching the video that we know of now, so not a second one, just the one that's been circulating in February by the DA at the time, who was recusing himself and yet making suggestions and passing along recommendations. And that included conclusions from watching that video of, as your guest just explained, the citizen's arrest statute of Georgia and also self-defense. And at a minimum, I think what you can see in that video is nothing reaching there. At a minimum, it is an incredibly disturbing situation, and at a maximum, it is humans hunting a human. And so to kind of pull those conclusory comments from that of, well, the jogger was the one who started the altercation, or he definitely was in furtherance of committing a felony and therefore justifying regular citizens detaining him, we don't see that at all. Thankfully now, obviously, corrective measures have been taken, but all of that happened in February. It's too much.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Juan, Tim Scott, the senator from South Carolina, said this today. Every single time the excuses pour in, he looked suspicious. We thought he was committing a crime. The fact remains that AHMAUD Arbery was hunted down from a pickup truck and murdered in cold blood. My heart breaks for his family, and justice must be served. And the Attorney General of Georgia, Chris Carr, said today that they are absolutely going to stay on it and ensure that justice is done. Now those two men have been arrested, and they'll be facing the court and have due process, of course. But your thoughts on this at the moment?
Well, I just have to cool my emotions, because I think every parent in America can understand and have sympathy for, a mother and father whose son goes out for a jog and then ends up dead for no reason. It's just an outrage. But I think it's particularly the case for black parents. I think you can understand why any parent of a black son has to worry every time the child leaves the house that the child is seen as something of a threat to somebody out there. We wouldn't know, Dana, about this. Remember, this incident takes place in, I believe, February 23rd, 25th, in that range. We are here now in early May, and there's finally a charge in this case. But without that video, there would be nothing. In other words, this was being excused. This was being wiped away. You have to have a video. But it reminds me, and I think this is the reason it's so upsetting, it reminds me, of course, of everything from Trayvon Martin to Tamir Rice. I can keep going. You can keep going through the thousands of incidents where there is no video. And if there's no video, then people say, oh, well, you know, he was a suspect or he looks suspicious. No, he was black. That's the problem here. And it's just an outrage. I think every
Let me ask
parent,
Jesse about,
you know, especially black parents, are upset about this.
let me ask Jesse about the delay. One of the things that the Attorney General addressed today was that they are going to investigate the investigators in that county because they're wondering, you know, what happened down there. The video existed from the jump.
Yeah, and there was maybe a relationship professionally with someone who maybe even had investigated this jogger while members of law enforcement. There's a lot that needs to still be investigated because we've seen cases like this before where new information comes out or new video comes out. So I'm just going to wait for the investigation to finish before I really weigh in on it. But just to Juan's point, on the surface of this, if this is really the way a man dies in America, that is no way for a man of any race to die in this country. And if you are in a neighborhood and you're suspicious or you hear about a break-in or anything, I just don't think it's a good idea to load up the truck with some guys and some guns and park in the middle of the street and play officer. You call 911, you give a description, or, you know, you say this guy was there, and, you know, let the police handle it. You know, you're really asking for it if you park in the middle of the street with loaded shotguns and confront anybody that's jogging or anybody in a way that's confrontational. So what if the jogger went for the guy's gun? I mean, many people might go for the gun if someone's holding a gun with a car right in front of you like this. I mean, it is a very, very combustible situation that, you know, if they hadn't gone out and done that, this man would have been alive.
All right, Greg, I'll give you a final thought. Of course, you probably heard the train. Tell me
I did. It always comes when I'm about to talk. Everybody's leaving town. First look analysis of this, because I think it's the beginning of this story. They're arrested. It should go through all the proper channels. I think that's important to get everything out there. I'm looking at a video, and I'm just going, I don't think there's no evidence he committed a crime that justified shooting him. And maybe he did, you know, and you could argue, why did he grab the gun? I don't know. People might grab the gun if somebody's pointing a gun at them. I see this story, therefore, as a story about potential corruption and cover-up over an obviously idiotic confrontation. I understand that we live at a time where the prism to which we stare at these stories will always be through race. I think it's an important point to put out that what Jesse said is, of any race, somebody being treated like this is awful. The story is about potential corruption and cover-up of an idiotic confrontation. The video, I don't know anybody who has looked at that video and not been unnerved by it, disturbed, sickened by it. So what does that say about America? We don't like it. Pretty obvious.
We don't. It's sickening, and it was very hard to watch it, but important to as well.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Straight ahead.